Our guest today, as I had informed in the previous podcast, is Lieutenant General V.M. Bhuvana Krishnan, Ati Visisht Seva Medal, Yuddha Seva Medal, the Quartermaster General of our Army.
In 1998, a study on non-field forces recommended the disbandment of the then 26 pioneer units, and 10 of them were disbanded between 1996 and 1998. However, the Corps proved itself invaluable in its contributions during the Kargil conflict. All of us would remember the legendary horse Chetak of Maharana Rana Pratap, as well as the legendary horses of Arjun's, Ashwarath, Saibya, Sugriva, Megha Pushpa, and Balbhaka.
I once again thank you for coming to our show and coming to the platform of Clause. Thank you and Jai Hind to all our audience. Hello and welcome to the YouTube channel of Center for Land Warfare Studies, popularly known as Clause, an independent think tank on strategic studies and land warfare issues. As the audience is by now aware that our center has started a series of podcasts inviting senior serving military officers to apprise the nation about the preparedness of Indian Army to deal with current and likely future security challenges facing the country. Our guest today, as I had informed in the previous podcast, is Lieutenant General V.M. Bhuvana Krishnan, Ati Visisht Seva Medal, Yuddha Seva Medal, the Quartermaster General of our Army. QMG is responsible for logistics of the entire Indian Army. I must add here that we rarely realize the importance of logistics. Let me inform the audience that we do not realize the presence of logistics, but the absence of it. The ongoing wars are clearly highlighting this fact. So unless the army is logistically prepared, we cannot win wars. Let me put it in simple terms. A well-planned and executed logistics, both during peace and war, is the bedrock for success in any battle. To tell us more about the functions and activities of the Quartermaster General, we have today with us the man responsible for the entire logistics cover for the Indian Army, Lieutenant General V.M. Bhuvana Krishnan. But before I invite him to this podcast, let me very briefly introduce our audience to his profile. General Bhuvan Krishnan, Ati Visisht Seva Medal, Yuddha Seva Medal, is an alumnus of Sainik School, Amravati, an NDA, Khadagwasla. The General Officer was commissioned in June 1988 from IMA Dehradun into the Dogra Regiment. The officer has done various career courses and has performed extremely well in those. He's double MPhil in Defense and Management Studies and Defense and Strategic Studies respectively. The General Officer has commanded a battalion of Dogra Regiment, the most challenging brigade of our army, the Siachen Brigade, and an infantry division in the valley. He also has the privilege of having commanded the elite 17 Corps. He was an instructor at the Defense Services Staff College, Wellington, and above all, Defense Attaché at the High Commission of India in London. I happened to have been there in London while he was tenanting this particular appointment, when I had gone for attending a particular seminar. The General Officer is also Colonel of the Dogra Regiment and Dogra Scouts with effect from 1st November 2022. The General Officer was awarded the Yuddha Seva Medal on 26 January 2016 and Ati Visisht Seva Medal on 26 January 2022. He is presently holding the appointment of Quartermaster General, and if I were to put it in simple words, the Annadata of Indian Army. There is an old saying that the army marches on its stomach, and General Krishnan ensures that for all of us. A very warm welcome to you, General Krishnan, to this particular podcast of ours.
Thank you very much, sir. I think it was very well put that the absence of logistics, is always sorely felt. And I'm happy to be here in the podcast. And CROSS is a very distinguished and fine institution and the think tank of the Indian Army. And I'm honored to be here with you, sir.
Thank you very much, General Krishnan. In fact, I'll straight away launch into the session, essentially to cut on time. I want to ask you, could you provide an overview of your responsibilities, role, task, charter, etc., which mostly people are not aware of our country? So, over to you with that first little question.
The Quartermaster General is amongst the principal staff officers to the Chief of Army Staff, and he is responsible for all matters Q, as we call in the Army. Amongst the responsibilities I have as a Quartermaster General, first and foremost is the planning and provision of land and accommodation for the Army establishments, as well as environmental conservation and management, and responsible for monitoring provisioning of transport, supply, fuel, oils, and lubricants, and of course, rations. Monitors the purchase, training, breeding, health, and efficiency of all animals right till the disposal in the army. And one is also responsible for provisioning of canteen and hostel services. And the Quartermaster General also monitors the functioning of the Pioneer Code, which provides a disciplined and well trained manpower. And I also have an administration and coordination directorate, which is intended for providing administration and logistic support for the Army headquarters here at Delhi. The Indian Army is focused on quality assurance, timely delivery of services, technology absorption, and optimal employment of all its resources. And towards these larger goals of the Indian Army, the Quartermaster General's branch, building upon the solid foundation over the decades, implements measures to further enhance the quality of rations and habitat, ensure infusion and absorption of technology, and optimal utilization of units, personnel, animals, and equipment, and thereby ensuring combat readiness.
Thank you, General Krishnan, for that brief peek into your roles and responsibilities. While you were covering your response, I heard the word environment as part of your LW and E. Uh, is it a new entry into your lexicon, or it has been there from the past as well?
Military stations and cantonments, I would call them the green lungs of the town, city, or the rural belt where they are. And to give this a special focus, the environment was added on to the land and works a couple of years back.
Okay.
And now it is an established vertical within the land works and environment. And by virtue of providing that E, we have re-emphasized the importance which the Army has always given to the environment.
I think it's in tune with our 2047 goal of being a developed Viksit Bharat with the environment being part of our scheme of development. Moving on to the next question, which I have for you, is that could you inform our viewers about the directorates that fall under your purview? Because I believe you possibly control the most number of directorates which are functioning under you, almost 7 of them. So could you give us a brief preview as to what are their fundamental roles and general achievements?
As you correctly said, sir, there are a total of 7 directorates under the Quartermaster General's branch. And I shall now cover upon each aspect of these directorates. First is the Supplies and Transport Directorate, which is responsible for the Army Service Corps. In fact, it is the line directorate of the Army Service Corps, which is the oldest and the largest administrative service of the Army and is into its 264th year of its existence. The ASC is responsible for provisioning, procurement, and budgeting of petroleum products, hygiene chemicals, dry supplies, tinned and dehydrated items of rations. In addition, it also handles the mechanical and animal transport of the Indian Army. The Corps ensures a very robust supply chain while maintaining stringent quality control in accordance with what we have as the defense food specifications, which are continually revised. The major contribution of this ASC would include vital roles during various conflicts, the Indo-Pak conflicts of 48, 65, 71, the Chinese aggression of 1962, the internal operations in Hyderabad and Goa, and also the Indian peacekeeping force operations in Sri Lanka, and the ongoing counter-terrorist operations in Jammu and Kashmir and in the rugged high-altitude areas. The Corps did a yeoman's service in the treacherous terrain in Kargil sector during the Kargil conflict of 1999. And in fact, many of us are not aware that 874 AT Battalion, a battalion based out of Udhampur, which was moved into the Kargil sector, was awarded the Chief of Army Staff Unit citation for its sterling performance during Operation. In fact, the roll of honor of the Army Service Corps includes a Mahavir Chakra, 4 Kirti Chakra, 14 Veer Chakra, 23 Shaurya Chakra, and 114 Sena medals. Moving on to the Land, Works and Environmental Directorate, about which we had a small conversation. The scope of this directorate has expanded over the years, starting off as an additional directorate for land and works into now a full-fledged directorate of land, works and environment. It is responsible, as I said, for provisioning of and planning of land and accommodation for all army establishments and units. And it also focuses on matters relating to ecology and environmental conservation, and these days also into the utilization of non-conventional sources of energy.
Okay.
The Army Postal Service is again a directorate which has been serving the Indian Army for very long. It has completed 50 years since raising, and we have what is commonly known as the 56 APO and the 99 APO, which actually signify the one central base post office and second central base post office. It also has an Army Postal Service Center, which is a training establishment located at Canteen. The Army Postal Service ultimately emerged as an independent corps on 1st March 1972 with the emblem Rajhans, which is a flying swan approved by none other than the Honorable President of India. The corps today is a lean organization providing postal and scheduled dispatch service cover, e-commerce delivery, and services like Aadhaar, newspapers, magazines. The field post offices cater for our troops across the country and even on UN missions abroad. The Army Postal Service, I must say, is unique and one of its kind in its composition within the Indian Army. It has volunteer personnel from the Department of Post and Indian Postal Services officers serving on deputation along with directly recruited personnel of the Army. It's in fact an example of civil-military synergy which has served our nation and the Army very well. Moving on to the Remount and Veterinary Services Directorate. It is responsible for breeding, rearing, and training of Army animals, their health management, treatment, immunization, and also the tactical employment of them for military purposes. And once the animals have grown old, then the Remount and Veterinary Corps ensures that they are treated with compassion and cared at the unique geriatric centers for our army animals. In fact, it's a full life cycle concept. The Corps plays a pivotal role in providing animal-based logistics by ensuring the health of army animals engaged in what we call the last mile connectivity. It also provides operational support to our combat teams through military working dogs, both in counter-insurgency and conventional operations. In fact, the Corps has distinguished itself in various operations during various wars as well as the ongoing counter-terrorist operations as well. Moving on to the Pioneer Directorate, it's amongst the much lesser known directorates of the Indian Army, but has a rich history of contributions to combat logistic support. In fact, in 1998, a study on non-field forces recommended the disbandment of the then 26 pioneer units. and 10 of them were disbanded between 1996 and 1998. However, the Corps proved itself invaluable in its contributions during the Kargil conflict, and in fact, 5 new pioneer units were raised in the aftermath of Op Vijay, both in Op Snow Leopard as well as in the ongoing operations. We continue to use the pioneers, and they have played a significant role in ensuring the continuous flow and build-up of logistics. In fact, the Pioneer Corps role is to provide disciplined and well-trained manpower where civil labor is either not available or its employment may be precluded for security reasons. The tasks laid down for our pioneers are to provide guards and escorts for headquarters and administrative and logistic establishments, and also for loading, unloading, and carriage of stores and equipment, and also to operate with store holding installations and engineer units. Moving on to the last of my directorate, the Canteen Services Directorate, which impacts our veterans as well as serving soldiers and families. This started off as a public limited company with a working capital of 48 lakhs in 1948. And then in 1977, the CSD, as it is popularly known, became a government department. The main objectives of the canteen services are, firstly, to provide consumer goods of high quality at a very competitive price, and ensure consumer satisfaction of its 45 lakh beneficiaries, which includes serving defense personnel, veterans, and families. And while doing this service, it also generates a reasonable level of profit, essentially to sustain the organization and its growth and provide additional facilities for troops and their families.
Well, Jan Krishnan, I think that was a good bird's eye view of what your directorate is your branch is doing. Uh, I'm reminded of two three things. When we talk of QMG's branch, and the first one is that when we control a particular organization, in the management parlance we say that 8 is the span of control. So you're just about short of that 8 figure, that you have 7 entities to control. And the second thing which I noticed, and possibly which I want the people of India to know, is that you are spanning your activity right from operations to peacetime, from operations to veterans. I think that's a huge spectrum of activities which you have to look after, and my compliments for that. Moving on to your next question, which is you mentioned about the ST Directorate or the Army Supply Corps, which is responsible for meeting the requirements of our field forces in terms of rations, fuel, and transport. Could you highlight the initiatives being undertaken to enhance the capability of the core and elaborate on how are we preparing for theaterization? You understand that today the buzzword is that we are moving toward the integrated theater command concept. So how is the ASC being geared to meet that challenge, especially that it has a huge operational role? And how will it transform into a very essential part of the theaterization process?
As you correctly brought out, sir, the Army Service Corps is also at the leading edge of transformation, and as part of the Indian Army's efforts towards technology absorption. In fact, the Indian Army designated the years 2024 and 2025 as the years of technology absorption, and the decade from 2023 to 2032 as the decade of technology transformation. And as part of this, we have been taking a number of initiatives, from ensuring that technology is used in both ration and transport management, to revolutionizing the last mile delivery, The animal transport has been the mainstay of last mile delivery all these decades. And with the development of infrastructure and technology, we are looking at multiple options. We have introduced the all-terrain vehicles and rugged terrain vehicles capable of carrying about 500 to 250 kgs on narrow operational tracks. We also are in the process of introducing heavy logistic cargo drones and also looking at modern warehousing, learning from our own industry and its best practices. So therefore, the modernization of our major supply depots are also underway. And of course, logistics cannot be without a third dimension. And with modern aircraft being inducted into the Indian Army, the ASC is keeping itself apace to ensure that it is able to capitalize on this with introduction of technology in this field as well. Moving on to the ration management, we have been continually reviewing our defense food specifications, as well as are in tune with some of the measures taken at the national level. So towards this end, we have introduced fortified rice as per the governmental initiative. And also we have introduced special rations to our troops deployed in high altitude areas. Millets have been introduced last year as part of the International Year of the Millets. And this would be a major game changer going forward. We also have introduced the Global Standards 1, which ensures that all our supplies are tracked right from the source till the end. And as per the mandate of the Government of India, we have gone into the GEM portal for procuring all our rations as well as the hygiene and chemicals also. And of course, I did talk about the FSSAI's self-certification model, and this has been rolled out this year for a few products, and we will learn our lessons as we go forward.
Okay.
Moving on to the FOL or the fuel, oil, and lubricants and the transport management. We have introduced modern aircraft refueling pumps, which, as the Director General would be aware, has replaced the old Sudan pumps, which were the mainstay of refueling our helicopters in the forward areas.
I do remember that.
And we have also introduced simulators in a big way, and even for our Agniveers, so that it can provide them with great confidence when they are undergoing their advanced military training prior to passing out back into the units. We have also taken a number of measures to reduce the carbon footprint by introducing electrical vehicles in the Indian Army in phases. And we are also going to introduce Bharat 6 compliant vehicles.
Standards.
And of course also E20, that is ethanol 20, will also be introduced in the times to come. We are already with E10 as the mainstay of our fuel. And moving towards theaterization, which the Director General mentioned, synergy in logistics is an imperative for the Indian Defence Forces. And therefore, to foster joint logistics, the Defence Forces have set up 3 joint logistic nodes, and many more are in the pipeline. And we are looking at about 51 joint logistic nodes across the country. And for this, we need a sound understanding, cross-staffing, and joint training of our staff. And that is very much underway to enable further integration of our joint logistics.
Well, General Krishnan, I think that gives a very good overview of the ASC, a very very important service of our army. I'm reminded of certain things which you said during your during your talk. I was reminded of special rations above 20,000 feet. And when we were youngsters and I was posted somewhere in the east, we used to travel a lot on various kind of transports, and modes of transports were there. And there was one this bridge along that particular route, which was known as the Anda Bridge. The then I got thinking as to why this bridge is known as Anda Bridge, and later on once I interacted with my colleagues and my Jawans, etc., they said, sir, if you are this side of the bridge, you don't get that additional egg, but if you are on the other side of the bridge, you get that additional egg. So I think that was a good thing which you said, that now from 12, I mean now the special rations are available from 12,000 feet. That has definitely impacted the morale of our Jawans, and which is a very good step. I have two, three quick questions, and I think thereafter we move to the next one. Firstly, you spoke about the last mile delivery, and there is this thing called force substitution which goes along with it. Can you highlight about that? What exactly is that?
Uh, well, sir, as part of force substitution, in fact, in this context, I would say substituting the animal transport with alternate means for last mile delivery. I get that as the intention of your question. I spoke about all terrain vehicles and
Yeah,
rugged terrain
correct.
vehicles. And for that, we need the infrastructure to keep pace.
Okay.
Uh, then, considering the rugged terrain we have, we also have to speed up our logistics. And therefore, we also are going in for heavy cargo logistic drones.
Okay.
And we also are working towards designing and developing within our country in tune with the governments and the nations, I would say, Atmanirbhar Bharat, robotic mules.
Okay.
And we are working with
The industry.
and research institutions of our country in developing robotic mules, also as part of force substitution for the animal transport.
Oh, well, that was a good explanation of this term, because I keep hearing about this term in the strategic and security community. Moving on to the next question, you see, one of the major factors today in I would say environment protection, climate security, etc., has been the pollution which takes place, and the Indian Army's footprint, especially of the carbon, is very high, especially in the frontier areas, whether it is the north or the east. So, what is the Indian Army's initiative now to reduce this footprint of the carbon, so that while we need to have the infrastructure, we need to have all the stuff going up right up to the last mile, we also take measures to ensure that the carbon footprint is reduced in tune with the overall national objective.
You're absolutely correct, sir. The Indian Army, as I mentioned earlier, also is absolutely conscious of the need to preserve our pristine environment in the forward areas, and also is at the forefront of ensuring that the environment in the hinterland where we are based and continue to train is well taken care of. Towards the national effort at reducing the carbon footprint, the Army has been taking measures over the years. In fact, if the Director General would remember, we used to have coal-fired bukharis in the earlier days.
Yes.
Even the wood bukharis used to be there.
And a lot of untoward incidents used to happen because of that.
And then we transitioned on to kerosene bukharis.
Yeah.
And we continue to improve our system as we go forward. We have also introduced and are carrying out trials with lightweight, high density polyurethane LPG cylinders. of 10 kgs. And we are quite confident as we go forward in perhaps the years to come, we may be able to partly substitute the K oil with LPG. In the recent times, we have started introducing electrical vehicles into the army. We have 6 electrical vehicles flying in the army headquarters under the administration and coordination directorate, which I mentioned is responsible for providing logistic support to the army headquarters. We have plans to introduce electrical vehicles in a major way, and with the technology developing further, we're quite confident that we would transition into alternate technologies in the decades to come. Concurrently, we also have to develop the EV infrastructure, which we are working on. We're also planning to introduce hydrogen fuel cell technology. In fact, I'm quite happy to inform the audience that we have partnered with IOCL for trialing a 37-seater hydrogen fuel cell bus at Delhi. It's currently operating for the commuters, the soldiers and the officers from their place of residence to the army headquarters and back. We have also, in tune with the governmental initiative, introduced ethanol 10, and we are in the process of formulating a roadmap for introducing E20 petrol, while of course taking due cognizance of its impact on logistics, storage dynamics, as well as its ability to operate in the rough and tough terrain form. So these are some of the initiatives we are taking as far as reducing the carbon footprint with respect to our supplies and transportation. I shall cover about the other green aspects as we go forward.
Thank you, Jan Krishnan, for that peek into how the army is now in tune with the overall national goal of reducing the footprint of carbon, which is a very, very important aspect of our environmental protection. Coming on to the next question, which is related to land, which is a major, major responsibility as far as the QMG is concerned. And you always come into the news as far as this particular aspect is there. Indian Army is, dealing with land. Possibly it is the largest landholder in the country after railways. Railways has the number one spot. So from that perspective, can you enlighten our viewers how this land is being utilized and how its use is being aligned with the recent government initiatives, allaying the misgivings which are there in the environment, which I briefly alluded to in my, opening remarks as far as this question is concerned. So give out the facts, so that public is at rest as to what the army is doing and how it is going about it.
Well, sir, as you correctly brought out, the defense is amongst the largest of the land owners or land holders, I would say. However, the land which the defense holds and the Indian Army holds is for specific military purposes. Land is required for basing our units across the country. Land is required for both individual and collective training, and also for administrative infrastructure. If I can give an analogy, in the game of football, you have 2 teams playing with 11 players each. Means you need a football field of the size of 100 meters by 60 meters. And in that field, you have 22 players playing. Now that essentially comes down to 2 sections worth of troops perhaps carrying out training. So when you have to carry out training as a company or a battalion or as a combined arms entity,
Yeah.
or perhaps as a division, you need land to be able to carry out your maneuver operations as well as defensive operations. So, therefore, you need to train on ground.
And I must add here that you have long range weapons, that require more than the analogy which you actually
Absolutely.
painted. So you require huge tracts of land as far as realistic training is concerned.
Yes, absolutely. And you need to, as you correctly said, to have realistic force on force training to
Absolutely.
be able to always be combat ready to defend our nation. Having said that, the land requirement for the Indian Army has been revised, and in 1991 we finally reduced our land requirement by a whopping 41.8%.
That's huge.
Yes, and we continue to acquire land, of course, especially in the forward areas, to build our infrastructure and also construct roads as well as railway lines. And in this, we follow the Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation, Resettlement Bill of 2030 so that the landowners are suitably compensated. We are also conscious of our responsibility towards nation building, and therefore, whenever land is required for public infrastructure, we have a system of online land management system portal where the state and the central government institutions can file in their requirement of defense land for public infrastructure. And we consider each one of those requests on the merits and facilitate execution of those public infrastructure projects. In fact, in the recent times, we have enabled 18 public infra projects across the country. We are also conscious of the connectivity issues of the citizens of our country who are living around and outside the cantonments. And we have in recent times opened 19 of our roads in 9 cantonments for the use of general public. And again, there is the need for expanding our telecom infrastructure and thereby providing connectivity to our citizens. And therefore, Army is part of the Gati Shakti Sanchar portal of the government. And on this portal, whenever telecom operators need to install mobile towers, they file their applications and we process them and we grant them the necessary permission in accordance with the guidelines given by the Ministry of Defense. In fact, we have granted more than 200 permissions since the portal went live on 22nd June 2023. Therefore, I would like to assure the audience that the defense land is put to good use for the defense of our nation, and the Quartermaster General is amongst the people responsible for management of defense land, while the Director General Defense Estate is the custodian of all defense on behalf of the Ministry of Defense and is also the custodian of all defense land records which have been digitized.
Well, thank you, General Krishnan, for that response. While you were giving out your reply, I took note of the fact that by virtue of doing certain actions, certain readjustments, we have been able to reduce our land requirement by 41 point some percentages. It's a very huge drop in the requirement. Can you highlight to us exactly what we did to ensure that our land requirements are cut down so that we overall contribute towards the nation building as such?
Land requirement of the army, and using the latest technology, as well as going high as far as construction of our administrative and infrastructure and habitat, we have been able to bring down our land requirements substantially.
Okay. Also, I suppose the technology must have been used to, reduce the requirement of ranges, etc., so that you are able to exploit more of simulators and such like things. And also, the new technology can be used to, I suppose, reduce the range requirements, length, etc. Those also must have been there.
We have come up with, in collaboration with the DRDO, the baffle ranges,
Yeah, so that's
which have reduced our land requirement for long ranges. And simulators are being used. However, you would agree, sir, that for any army to be combat ready,
yeah.
because wars are going to be fought with live bullets and live shells, and therefore there is no substitution
For a realistic training.
live and realistic training.
Absolutely. I mean, that point is given. Absolutely. Without that, we will not be able to achieve what we are meant to do. Coming on to the question related to this only is about the infrastructure. QMG branch is also responsible for development and construction of infrastructure, which is progressing very rapidly. So, what are the challenges which are faced by you, or for that matter, by the Indian Army, in execution of the construction of infrastructure, and what are the mitigation measures that you are adopting?
Well, as the Director General is aware, that the Indian Army is spread across the country,
Yeah.
from some of the roughest and toughest of terrains in high altitude jungles, in monsoon prone areas, and riverine terrain. And therefore, each of these terrain, along with their peculiar weather conditions, impose their own challenges in rapid infrastructure development. So therefore, we have to plan well ahead to be able to construct our infrastructure in time. Secondly, we are spread across multiple stations to be able to be ready to move at short notice to the borders or across the country, especially with respect to HADR operations as well. So, being spread across multiple stations and being deployed in some of the roughest of the terrains in the world, there are challenges. However, we have to prioritize our infrastructure development, and we are conscious of that and the need to put our money to wise use in time. So, amongst the focus of infrastructure development of the Indian Army are to build up our roads and railway lines for strategic connectivity and operational connectivity, the ammunition infrastructure, which is very important for any war fighting. We also focused on modernizing our military hospitals, and we in fact have undertaken a roadmap for construction of 14 state-of-the-art base hospitals across the country.
Okay.
Training, of course, is the bedrock of any combat-ready military. And therefore, training infrastructure is always a key focus, both in what we call as Category A training establishments, which comprise of training establishments for each line directorate, as well as officers' training establishments, and the Agniveer training establishments, which are our regimental centers. So, allotment is being made specifically for these training establishments as well, especially our requirement for Agniveers. and of course the married accommodation for our troops and the basing of units across our country. And while doing this, we also have taken advantage of the new technologies which are proliferating across the country, including the light gauge steel frame as well as 3D printing. 3D printing, we have started off in a very small scale.
Okay.
And of course, we have revised our processes and we have gone in for EPC contracts as well to speed up the construction of infrastructure across the country.
Thank you, Jan Krishnan. You mentioned something about ammunition, and you have seen in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, also in the other conflicts which are going around the world. In fact, just to inform you, there are about 30 conflicts which are ongoing across the globe, and that's a huge number. One thing which has come out loud and clear is about ammunition. How do you manage the ammunition? So, when we look at our own ammunition management system, we are moving towards theaterization. Some integration is also taking place. There are a number of commonalities also in certain ammunition. I won't say in everything, but certain ammunition categories. So, are there any tri-service initiatives also being taken, if you are aware of it, as far as the ammunition management is concerned? If you are aware, could you throw some light on that?
Uh, Very much so. As we move towards joint logistic node and theaterization, uh, we have plans to take advantage of each service ammunition infrastructure based on station stroke operational requirement,
Okay.
and of course on the availability of sufficient surplus storage space
Okay.
to ensure that each other's service ammunition is also catered for in the ammunition storage of other services.
Uh, Moving on to the next question, since you had said that you're going to elaborate upon it more, when we are talking about the carbon footprints. So, could you elaborate on the Indian Army's green initiative aimed at supporting the environment as it advances towards modernization? Because that would help in reducing the carbon footprint to a great extent.
Absolutely true, sir. The Indian Army, as I mentioned, is always at the forefront of green initiatives. And our military stations are the green lungs of any city, town, or even the rural belt of our country. And planting of trees has been ingrained in every soldier and officer in the Indian Army right from the time we joined our services. And going beyond this, we have a couple of other initiatives as well.
Okay.
I would like to touch upon the landfill Mukt Army, which we have set ourselves last year. It goes by the acronym AMSA, or Apashisht Mukt Sainya Abhiyan. And towards this end, we have created certain phases of rolling out this project. And in the phase one, we have nominated one station in each command to become landfill free. And this is also in accordance with the Government of India's Solid Waste Management Rules 2016.
Okay.
And we have ambitious plans to have all the 306 military stations landfill free in the next 5 years. Towards this end, we have been carrying out door-to-door awareness campaigns and educating everyone about the segregation of waste and its subsequent disposal as well. Our revised scales of accommodation for the defense services, which were revised in 2022, enable provisions for environmental management and works such as composters, shredders, incinerators, along with allied infrastructure. Even rainwater harvesting, arboriculture, and energy efficient devices, which could all be executed through our defense works procedure. We also have tie ups with the National Thermal Power Corporation,
Okay.
and we are rolling out a microgrid power plant, hydrogen power plant at Chushul in Ladakh, which would generate 200 kilowatts of green hydrogen electricity through the plant which would be established over there. And this would entail a solar power plant for hydrolysis of water to produce hydrogen, which during the non solar hours will provide power through fuel cells. We're also into solarization in a fairly big way. We have completed 68 projects with a cumulative capacity of 84 megawatts, including at the Siachen base camp. We also have signed an MOU with NTPC for direct purchase of 25 megawatts of solar power for our Delhi cantonment. And we are also exploring, in conjunction with NTPC, for establishing solar plants in certain large defense land tracts. Moving on to the afforestation drive, over the past 2 years, more than 1.4 million trees have been planted across military stations using traditional methods and scientific techniques. And this year, in tune with our Honorable Prime Minister's initiative on the World Environmental Day, we have rolled out the campaign of Ek Ped Maa Ka Naam, and this has gained huge traction across the Indian Army. And as per the latest numbers we have planted 44.85 lakh trees across the country.
Okay.
Also, the World Environmental Day had set out a global theme for land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience under the slogan, Our Land, Our Future, We Are the Generation Restoration. Towards the aim of spreading the awareness of green initiatives across the Indian Army, we also have rolled out competitions for the best clean and green station every year with effect 2021. And this focuses on decarbonization efforts and afforestation. And also, as part of the governmental initiative, we have the Griha norms, and each building which is constructed, which is over 20 crore, is mandated by the Defence Works procedure to obtain a 3-star Griha rating. And in fact, sir, the new Talsana Bhavan, which is under construction in Delhi cantonment, would be a 4-star Griha compliant building.
Thank you, Janal Krishnan, for that overview of the initiatives which the Army is taking. In fact, I am reminded of a study which I had carried out in War College, and it was related to exploiting the rooftops of the Indian Army. It was a major study, and this was done on our own initiative. We just wanted to calculate the kind of potential which we have, and you will be amazed that if we are able to somehow exploit that potential, it will be land into two. So whatever potential we have on our land, just double it up. That is the kind of potential which we will have, both in terms of solar and as well as terrace gardening, etc. There are so many areas where we can contribute both organizationally and individually Moving on to the next question, which is now we are getting into the more interesting part and the more lighter part of your work, and which is about the animals. Can you highlight what are the different kinds of animal which the Indian Army employs, and how do you exploit them during their prime age or during their operational abilities, and thereafter how do you dispose them of as they lose out on their on their productivity?
Before I take on the question of animals, touching upon what the Director General mentioned about rooftop solar potential.
Yeah.
So, in tune with the nation's initiatives on rooftop solarization, the Army, under the E&C branch, is looking at
Yes.
going rooftop in a fairly big way, taking advantage, as you said, that it can actually free up the land for
Correct.
more productive use.
Correct.
At the same time taking advantage of the rooftop for producing more renewable energy.
Yeah.
So moving on to the animals.
Yeah.
Animals have always been part and parcel of mankind. And and therefore it was a very natural progression for what I would say the human animal bonding or teaming. These days, man machine teaming is the buzzword, but I would say much before that, from times immemorial, the human machine bonding for civilizational purposes as well as war fighting has always been there. And I think all of us would remember the legendary horse Chetak of Maharana
Absolutely.
Rana Pratap, as well as the legendary horses of Arjun's, Ashwarath, Saibya, Sugriva, Meghapushpa, and Balhaka. Animals have always been used in the military for their unique capabilities. Today, we are talking about animal transport. But then, essentially, right from the Mahabharata times, the horse driven chariots as well as the cavalry were at the forefront of war fighting. And of course, as we move further forward in times, the dogs, which is considered the human's best friend because of their unique capabilities, have always been a force multiplier with their extraordinary sense of smell as well as hearing and also watching. Of course, the mules have been I would say, the mainstay of our last mile connectivity over the century and perhaps even more. And therefore, the remote and veterinary corps has had a deep bonding with the animals. And the Remount and Veterinary Corps' motto, in fact, is Pashu Seva Asmakam Dharma, which translates into service to animals is our duty.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say both the ASC and the RVC, through their animal handlers and dog handlers, have a great sacred bond, as I would say, a heartwarming sacred bond, which is reflected in their day-to-day, humans and animal relationship. Moving on to the different kinds of animals, we already touched upon mules and dogs, and horses, of course. The horses are currently used in training academies like the National Defense Academy. In fact, the Indian Military Academy, the Officers Training Academy, the Defense Services Staff College, and of course also in the National Cadet Corps units across the country to impart equitation training to our future leaders of the armed forces. In fact, equitation training has immense potential for developing leaders. In addition, the horses are also bred by the Remount and Veterinary Corps for use by the presidential bodyguards in their ceremonial events. We also have sporting horses which have brought laurels in various equestrian events at the national and international level. Moving on to the dogs, we have different types of dogs, various breeds employed in the Indian Army. We have the German Shepherds, the Belgian Malinois, and the Labrador Retrievers. We also have introduced indigenous breeds like the Mudol Hounds, the Chipipare, the Rajapalayam, the Kombai, and recently the Rampur Hounds as well. These dogs are trained for a variety of roles, from assault dog to guard dogs, to tracker dogs, infantry patrol dogs, explosive and mine detection dogs, narcotic detections, avalanche rescue dogs, and search and rescue dogs. In fact, the performance of the army dogs, or the military working dogs as they are scientifically called, and their handlers has been brilliant. And been there have been umpteen instances where the dog's powerful sense of hearing, smell, and seeing have enabled us to detect explosives, bombs, mines, thereby saving precious lives not only of military personnel but civilians as well. And they have been also successful in enabling us to track fleeing militants and neutralizing them. And towards this great contribution of the military working dogs, they have been bestowed with a number of awards by a grateful nation. The exploits of tracker dog Mansi, assault dogs Zoom and Axel, and very recently the tracker dog Kent are recounted with reverence, laid down their lives in the service of the nation. The army dog Kent, about whom I mentioned, was recently awarded the prestigious Mention in Dispatches Award on 15th August 2024, and its handler, Rajkumar Umare, was awarded Sena Medal for gallantry. So in total, I would say the canine warriors have been bestowed with a number of awards by a grateful nation. Our search and rescue dogs have been pressed into service not only in the recent Wayanad landslides, but also in many search and rescue operations across the country, notably in Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh in recent times, and even in Sikkim. Moving on to the training of army animals and the troops of Remount and Veterinary Corps, we have the Remount and Veterinary Corps Training Center and College at Meerut. And this is the alma mater of all RVC personnel, and it imparts training to officers and men of the RVC as well as other arms and services, and including paramilitary forces and friendly foreign countries.
Okay.
The center also has a state-of-the-art dog training facility where various specialities of army dogs are bred, reared, and trained into potent forces. It also has an equine disease-free zone, which is undergoing certification. And once it gets a certification, it would be a force multiplier in our equestrian events abroad. The RVC also has two important establishments called the Equine Breeding Studs. They're located at Babugarh in Uttar Pradesh and Hisar in Haryana, where equines are bred and trained before they are supplied to the rest of the army. We have for that training 2 remount training schools and depots at Saranpur in Uttar Pradesh and Hempur in Uttarakhand. And one of the important questions which keep coming to us, not only from within the army, but also from the civil fraternities, what do we do with the animals post their retirement from service? All the animals, if the Director General would recall, just a few moments back, I talked about the sacred bonding
Yes.
between the
handler and
animal handlers and the animals. So all the animals which have served the nation and completed their service are transferred back to geriatric care centers and lead a life in the company of other such animals. And they are accorded the best possible care and support. One more institution I would like to highlight to the audience is the Central Military Veterinary Laboratory, which is co-located with the RVC Center at Meerut. It is a less known institution, even amongst the military fraternity. It is an NABL accredited premier veterinary laboratory of the Indian Army. It provides investigational, diagnostic, referential, and research services relating to diseases of Army animals. The lab has a unique distinction of being a national referral laboratory for a number of animal and zoonotic diseases. In fact, it played a very premium role during the COVID-19 crisis.
Well, Jalan Krishnan, I think whenever we talk about animals, one does tend to get emotional because we are both from the infantry, and we have had so many opportunities where these dogs have proved to be our saviors. At times, they have given us leads which lead to a very successful operation. I was also in the NSG, and I found that they were really a very great asset. In fact, I'm reminded of a incident or a story which one of the engineers boys said. He was responsible for demining. So they carry out demining with the technical equipment, and then that is followed by the dogs and their handlers to actually smell the mines out or smell the explosive out. So I asked him, I asked that engineer's boy, I said, whom do you trust more? Your technical equipment which you are trying to locate the mines, or you trust the dogs? He said, sir, I trust the dog 98.88%. And I think that tells the story in a very, very, very short and a brief manner as to what kind of a role the dogs, or for that matter, any animals play as far as the army is concerned. Moving on to a next quick short question, and which is, how does the RVC contribute towards Atmanirbhar Bharat? I think there is something which you would like to highlight on this particular issue.
Indeed, the RVC contributes towards Atmanirbhar Bharat in its own way. And to give you a few examples, right from June 2008, the RVC has been at the forefront of breeding Zanskar ponies, which are native to Ladakh. And this project has been successful.
Mm-hmm.
And in recent times, they have been ferrying supplies deep into the Siachen Glacier.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, the Bactrian camels, or the double-humped camels, which are also native to the Ladakh region,
Okay.
are being used for logistics as well as patrolling in the Ladakh sector. And in the field of canines, I did touch upon the use of indigenous breeds.
Mm-hmm.
And the Remountain Veterinary Corps has taken the initiative in the last few years to introduce Mudol hounds, Chipiparai, Rajapalayam, and Kombai.
Well, Jan Krishnan, I think, uh, although short, but I think their contribution does make a difference. I'm again reminded of two things as far as this particular animal issue is concerned. I am a animal lover, so that's why I'm trying to ask a little more questions. Dogs, especially, and even the horses, for that matter. The common public loves them, and especially dogs who are trained, well trained, on the horses which are well groomed and well bred. So, is there a provision that once the horses and the dogs have outlived their prime age and the prime productive period, as I said, Is there a provision by which common public can take them on, take them as their pet?
What do we do with the dogs
Mhm.
after their useful service? Of course, I did mention about taking them to the geriatric care centers. Besides that, we also have a provision for dog lovers to adopt the military dogs, and giving an undertaking that the dogs would be taken care of with love and affection and good health as well. So, yes, civilians as well as veterans and serving defense personnel are free to seek dogs which have moved beyond their service with the army and are in the geriatric care centers for adoption.
Thank you, Jan Krishnan, for that quick response on a query which was possibly concerned with the common public as well. And coming on to the last, I suppose, and the final question of this podcast. And as I always say, it is always meant for the veterans. And we are talking here of Canteen Services Department. Could you highlight, what we are doing basically related to quality control, consumer satisfaction, and its contribution towards the nation overall, as also the veterans?
Canteen services, of course, touches the lives of all of us,
Yeah.
and therefore uh, we do take care of the quality of all goods introduced through the canteen stores department, and we have stringent quality control at different stages. And well before a product is introduced into the uh, canteen stores department, uh, the firms are expected to provide us the NABL certification of those products which they intend introducing into the canteen stores department.
Could you expand NABL for people to understand?
It's the National Accreditation Board for Testing and Calibration Laboratories.
Okay.
And in short, it is called NABL. And besides this, after the product has been introduced, we have periodic or random tests. And this is for all goods, food, liquor, as well as uh, the common items like suitcases, mats, and hygiene chemicals. So the whole range of products which
Okay.
are sold through the canteen stores department have to undergo periodic quality control tests.
Okay.
We also do on occasional, at occasional times, complaints are also received, and we carry out the testing of those products. And if found unfit, appropriate actions are taken against the defaulting firms. So for us, consumer satisfaction, the quality of our products, and the affordable cost at which they are introduced into the canteen stores department are absolutely important.
Okay.
This automatically ensures greater consumer satisfaction. Consumer satisfaction is also a function of our processes, and therefore we try and continue to refine our processes, including our online portal for firm demand items. And we are conscious of some of the glitches in the system currently, and we are working hard to overcome those glitches and refine the whole process. We have a robust feedback mechanism, both at the unit levels of the canteen as well as at the head office. And we take our feedback very seriously and try and improve our processes. Another word which I would like to tell is also that the CSD is not a profit-oriented organization. compensation.
Yes.
And whatever profit which it generates, they're reasonable profits,
Mhm.
which are flowed back into the system for the growth of the canteen stores department,
Okay.
as well as for providing facilities for our troops and the families in the form of quantitative discount and canteen trade surplus, which are slightly technical terms for the common man, but suffice to say the profits are flowed back
It goes.
through these two
Yeah,
mechanisms.
it goes back into the improvement of infrastructure
Absolutely.
related to the soldiers
Absolutely.
and the entire station, etc.
True, sir. And we have a fairly wide network of canteens services. We have 34 area depots and about 3,600 unit run canteens with almost about 45 lakh beneficiaries,
That's a
including
large.
serving soldiers, their families, veterans, widows, and the next of kins. And certain recent initiatives, as I mentioned, that we are always looking to improve our services, and some of the veteran friendly initiatives which I can highlight to our audiences, that we have rolled out a large number of ex-servicemen canteens, unit run canteens, and extension counters over the last 10 years to provide better access to our veterans and their families to canteen services. We also have, considering that the veterans may have to travel long distance perhaps, especially when the canteen is at a distance. So we have enabled all ranks as well as the veterans to purchase up to 1 month entitlement in advance, so that their frequency of visits to the canteens are minimized. And we also ensure that all our canteens are well stocked, though at times they might find that due to certain issues, perhaps sometimes there could be supply chain issues wherein some of the products may not be available at a point in time. Also, to prevent unnecessary hassles in renewing the canteen cards, especially for the veterans and the widows, we have discontinued the annual renewal of canteen smart cards.
Okay.
And now the cards which are issued are valid for 10 long years. We also have provided a unique canteen card for our Veer Naris and next of kins of battle casualties. This card enables easy identification, which ensures preferential treatment and due respect for them. And moving on to contribution to nation building through the canteen stores department. This is again very little known, but I would like to use this media to give it much greater publicity, that as part of Nari Shakti to promote women entrepreneurs, firms having 100% women ownership are provided a concession of approximately 85% in application fees for introduction of new items in the CST.
That's a major, I think, step.
True, sir. And we also have, I would say, advantages for MSMEs also. We promote them also to introduce their products through the CST. And another thing which I would like to highlight to our audiences, in line with Atmanirbhar Bharat, procurement and sale, if our audience could recall, of about 430 directly imported items were discontinued in the CSD in October 2020. This had a very positive impact. In fact, over 250 such items which were discontinued have been reintroduced into the CST once the firms shifted their manufacturing into our very own country,
Okay.
thereby generating employment and revenue for our nation. And lastly, I would like to highlight the Green India initiative. And in line with our national mission, efforts are being made to popularize sale of electrical vehicles and hybrid cars through the CST. Towards this end, 23 electric vehicles, 47 hybrid and 40 CNG based four-wheelers have been introduced in the CST, and the sale of electric vehicles have also been further incentivized.
Well, thank you, Jalan Krishnan. First of all, as far as this entire CSD stores department is concerned, canteen stores department is concerned, I think this is one thing which touches both the service and the veteran fraternity. So there is some amount of interest which gets generated. In line with that, there is a small query which is rising in my mind. Today we find that the digital world has spread all around us. Everybody is trying to diversify their sales through e-marketing. So is there any initiative of this form being undertaken in the canteen stores department? And if so, what is the status of that?
True, sir. This is the era of digital commerce, or e-commerce as one calls it. And in line with this, the Ministry of Defense is rolling out request for proposal for adoption of e-commerce through the area depots of the CST. It is at the initial stages, and I'm quite hopeful and confident that we would be able to roll it out at some point in time going forward. And this would essentially be for grocery items, and it would enable our veterans as well as serving personnel to be able to order grocery stores online.
I think in some form it will also contribute to the nation building, because then you'll require the delivery mechanism, and in the delivery mechanism automatically civilians will have to get involved in it. So therefore it will overall contribute in some form to the growth of the country. Well, thank you, Jan Krishnan. I think that was a very, very wonderful, good long session and covering 7 directorates. It's a major achievement, if I were to just put it in simple words, to cover such a large canvas in such a small time. With that, I once again thank you for coming to our show and coming to the platform of Clause. Thank you and Jai Hind to all our audience, with the promise that this is not the end of our series of calling senior military officers. Keep a watch at this space of Class YouTube channel. You will find more such podcasts coming in the next few months. Thank you and Jai Hind.